Brought to you by IOCO, Africa's leading integrated technology services company. It's time for Tech Talk. Now, local safe tech startup Aura, the group behind your panic buttons, ensuring that emergency services are dispatched to you when you need it, has raised almost 273 million rand in a Series B funding round and plans to use the proceeds for expansion into the US. Business Day's Mudiwa Gavaza joins us with more detail. Mudiwa, thanks so much for your time this afternoon. Before we speak about the expansion plans and the funding, please take me through what Aura does. I spoke about how it's responsible for, panic buttons.
All right, so you need to think of Aura like a marketplace,
okay,
but for emergency services. There are over 3,000 services that are registered on the platform, and by services we're talking security services, and by that we're talking your private security companies. So think the likes of ADT, which are on the platform, and then you're also thinking your emergency medical services, your ambulances, that type of thing. So when you press a panic button, I will use the example of Uber, because Uber is one of the people that are using the Aura platform. If you're in an Uber ride or whatever it is, something happens and you press the panic button, what's actually happening behind the scenes is that distress call is going to Aura, Aura's control room, and from there they can geolocate to say, okay, Ntaoleng is over here, and within her proximity, these are the emergency services that are available, and then they dispatch, whoever is nearest to you, to that. It's a little bit more efficient than going out and creating your own a set of emergency emergency medical or security forces. Rather, you crowd a bunch of these companies together so that whoever's available goes and works on or responds to that emergency situation.
You mentioned Uber as an example. So does the panic button sit within the Uber app?
Yes. So when you are in the Uber app, there's a certain section where if something happens, you can press a panic button. It's the same with a couple of companies out there, especially some of the insurers. Momentum, I believe Outsurance are a couple of the people that are making use of Aura's platform. And all it is that you have certain companies, certain people that are offering, a service to say, listen, we want to make sure that you're okay, right? Think of an insurer. It's in your insurance company's best interests
to make sure
that you're okay and that you're taken care of. So a lot of them offer, these emergency services. Think about how in certain instances, if your car breaks down, right? Some of the insurance companies actually, have a service where you can literally call and they'll send a car to you. And it's almost that same thing. But it's not the core business of an Outsurance or a Momentum, to do medical services or send a security team to you. So
they'll outsource.
Yes, they outsource, and Aura has become right now one of the big players in that market.
I can imagine there's a lot of buy-in. Aura does operate here at home as well as in the UK. How has it been able to navigate both environments?
So as far as I can tell, they seem to have been able to do a pretty good job. I mean, like we said, 3,000 of all of these companies are registered on the platform. When we spoke to one of the founders last week, Warren Mayers, he was actually talking about how initially there was a little bit of resistance from some of the individual players, to say, hey, who are you guys? What is this platform about, etc., right? Because this idea of a marketplace, it's not anything new, right? If you think about Take-A-Lot, it's a marketplace where a bunch of small, apart from Take-A-Lot's own stock, you have a bunch of businesses that are selling, on the platform. These people could individually sell, and they do individually sell, but they probably get access to market or access to a broader, number of people by having a presence on the platform. And it's almost the same thing. If you're a security company, you are literally getting calls from people that are either registered to your service or people that know that you exist, right? But in this particular case, you get opened up to, anyone, because 3,000 is a lot. And now you're being opened up to insurance company, customers, ride-hailing services, a number of people that you'd most likely as a business not have been opened up to before.
All right, so they are looking at scaling their services and jumping into the U.S. market. This, of course, after they secured over 270 million rands in funding. Why the U.S.? Is it just a bigger market?
So there are a couple of interesting things that are happening in the U.S. If you contrast with SA, right? In South Africa, there's a big leaning, especially in cities, around private security, right? Because policing is sometimes not adequate or sometimes overwhelmed, and all of those dynamics that are at play in South Africa. In the US, the dynamic that's at play is that crime has been on the rise in many instances. So what's ended up happening is that a lot of people have the panic buttons, and now we're talking either panic buttons on an app or a physical alarm in their house, because that's the other way that people come in. If it's from a security point of view, you have an alarm at your house, or you press a panic button and the security company comes. So now, because of the rise in crimes in places like the US, normally they would send the police. But because incidents have been on the rise so much, a lot of states are mandating that we are only going to send the police if we can verify that there's an actual incident happening at your house, at your business, or whatever it is. So the gap that the likes of Aura are now filling, right, is to say, let's use what we learned in South Africa and go and register a number of these private security companies, etc., that can go and be the first responder, go to an alarm first, verify is there an incident, and then they can then confirm to the police to say something is happening here. Send the police. We'll hold it down. We can do what we can for now, but now the police knows that there's an actual incident, because what tends to happen sometimes, right?
By mistake, or
either by mistake, or all of those things, they do happen. If you've ever pressed a panic button at a house or an alarm goes off, the security company calls you, and it's almost the same thing, that they're trying to do. So that's the gap that Aura is seeing there.
Mudiwa, talk to me about investor appetite when it comes to SA startups. I think we got a report last year from SAVCA saying that venture capital hit the 3 billion mark in 2023. From the conversations you've been having with people in the industry, are the right people, getting the capital?
That's a tough question, but I would answer it this way. In South Africa, what is considered venture capital has often been criticized that it's more akin to private equity.
Yeah.
And the reason they say that is that there aren't a lot of funders that are willing to fund your business off the ground. They want to catch Ntaoleng as a train while she's moving. They want to fund your growth as opposed to funding your business from the beginning. And that's the one dynamic. The second dynamic that's at play is that a lot of the local guys aren't able, I won't say aren't able, but they don't have, the capital pools aren't as deep, they aren't as wide for you to write certain checks. So in the case of Aura right now, they are part of a number, they've got a local investor, the likes of Hawaii, for example. But in this particular case, the funding round was actually led by one, global fund, and two, a French fund, right? Those are the two lead investors in the funding round, which ended up being a roughly $15 million, or 270 million rand, right? So there's appetite, but past a certain scale,
Okay.
a lot of these startups end up having to draw on international funding, which is why when you look at the big funding rounds, there tends to be international names that are dominating what are called the cap tables or the investor lists, that are there. And especially for the guys that are expanding out of South Africa, you are strategically saying, I'm not just looking for money. I'm looking for an investor that is maybe US based or has exposure to the US, so that as I'm entering the US, my investor can also be helping me, because it's also in their best interests.
Yeah, in that market.
Yeah,
yes.
that I'm growing.
Yes.
Right. So they can maybe lend some assistance in terms of mentorship, access to market, how to approach the market, right? Because if you're an SA business, you can't attack the whole United States. In the case of Aura, for example, they're starting out with the state of Texas, and then they're saying, depending on how it goes in Texas, then they can go to some of the other states that have these mandates in place. There's 7 states right now. Let's attack those first, because this is a country with a huge country. So you need people that can guide you along the way. So those are some of the considerations. But South Africa is seen as a destination for great tech talent, and we've actually been able to export a number of these platforms out there, because these guys have done well in South Africa. They're profitable in the UK, looking to replicate in the US.
All right, Mudiwa, thanks so much for your time and sharing those insights. That was Business Day's Mudiwa Gavaza. Brought to you by IOCO, Africa's leading integrated technology services company.